Hello, everybody. I am Charity Campbell. I'm here with my co host, Sheryl Stewart. And we have an amazing guest today on the When Love Interrupts podcast. I'd like to introduce Travis Smith. He is a pastor and also the executive director of an organization called Blue Ridge Hope, which I just adore and love. And today we asked him to come on and talk to us a little bit about fresh expressions of church and what that can look like, what it can mean, how we can define it, how it can grow relationships, all kinds of really, really fun stuff. So, thank you, Travis, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Sheryl, I'll let you kick it off if you want.
Yeah, so I would love to know a little bit about your story, Travis, and how you started being a pastor. What made you want to be a pastor?
Yeah, so my journey began fairly early on. The joke is in my house when I was a kid, I may have been like 4 or 5. And I told my mom that I was going to be a minister when I grew up. And she said, well, why? What's the motivation with that? And I said, well, I want to decide when we can get out early and go to lunch. So it was like, I had this
yeah.
Good plan.
Church and I had this rebellious spirit with each other a long time ago. So that's the joke early on. But then when I was a teenager, I really got the sense that God was calling me to ministry. I grew up in a very rural area. So at that time, I really only understood ministry in one aspect, which was pastoral ministry. So that was the direction I started in. And went to Gardner-Webb University in Bowling Springs, North Carolina. So Baptist University there, and finished with a religious studies degree, and then went on to Masters of Divinity school, their divinity school, and finished with a Masters of Divinity in pastoral counseling. And so from there, but let me back up. So, in Baptist tradition, we turn us loose pretty early. So I was pastoring a church when I was 20 years old. Which my joke with them was, it's a good thing we're not Catholic. I can't buy the communion wine. Yeah, I'm really glad you laughed, because they didn't.
They don't have no sense of humor. Come on,
sense of humor. Yeah. So, that was kind of my journey there. But anyway, so I went on into divinity school, and in my time of being at the university and then at master's level program, I really began to see things differently than I would had before. I was exposed to good material, good education. I'll never forget, someone told me one time, they said, I really feel that your experience in college and so forth has made you more liberal. And I said, well, no, actually the New Testament did that.
Right. And, on.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Reading of the New Testament actually is what you're referring to, which is, love the poor, feed the poor, love our enemies.
I have to jump in here because I had an almost exact conversation like that with my mom. It was, I don't know, about 2018 or so. And I grew up in a very, we talked a little bit about it on the intro episode, but I grew up in a very, very restrictive, almost cult-like Pentecostal church. And my mom, and as I, through personal experience, experienced God and his love, and it really revolutionized not just my heart, but the way I thought about him, the way I thought about life and everybody. Like, I changed, and my relationship to God changed. And my mom was like, and she was very serious about this too. And she was really concerned for my soul. She said, do you think the reason that you are so liberal is because you've been living in Portland, Oregon, and working in the media for all these years? Like, she really thought that they'd corrupted me. And I was like, Mom, no, I just got serious about this relationship with Jesus, and I can't be any other way now.
No. Yeah.
Oh, you said it so well. When you get serious about a real relationship with Jesus beyond what we've been told, beyond what we've been kind of fed. And this was something that I often said when I began pastoring churches, and when I began to see things differently, I taught differently. I said, all of us, and this was something that was given to me from a professor, but we all carry a theological suitcase. And that suitcase has been packed for us from birth on. Our mothers and fathers put things in that theological suitcase. Our Sunday school teachers did. Our Bible school teachers did. So on and so forth. But then when we become serious about a relationship with Jesus, we have to take those things out of that suitcase. And we have to look at each one. And we have to decide, okay, what's mine? And what am I going to put back in that suitcase to pack back up and carry with me in this journey?
Yeah.
And when I unpacked my suitcase, the things that I put back in were core to the teachings of Jesus.
Yep. Absolutely. And it's funny because Sheryl and I, we've talked about this a little bit. Also, deconstruction has become such a dirty word, especially in the Christian realm. But people, I think, are missing the core of what it is exactly what you just said. This was kind of told to me and I had to believe it, but now I'm at a point where I need to go through everything, pick out what I don't think, is true for me anymore, or I don't think is biblical or translated correctly, whatever it might be. It does not have to be a complete walking away of faith. And yeah, and that's a question that I'd love for you to talk about too a little bit, Travis. Like, so many people are so scared of that word, and I've often thought, what's better? Is it better for me to pretend and to go through motions and not have a relationship, not really know what I believe, not strongly actually believe what I say, or take some time to do the scary work maybe a little bit and question and come out authentic?
Well, my answer is I think it's more important to take the time and become authentic. Becoming authentic is not easy.
No.
It can be very painful. And I think that certain words in our culture have been monopolized by certain groups to sound a certain way, as in that it's negative. So certain words that may not haven't felt as dirty before have been politicized. They've been so many otherized and used in such a way. Now we can't even say we're deconstructing, and that automatically gets labeled by some as heresy.
Yeah.
Where, I think it is just unpacking the suitcase and figuring out, okay, what got packed for me? And as you said so well just now, Charity, what do I want to put back in that actually has been real for me?
Yeah.
What has been my lived experience? That's the thing, is what has been my lived experience with this faith? Because if we truly believe that faith is a dynamic living thing, then we have to believe that it changes us, and we change, and we grow.
Yes.
So I see deconstruction as a celebration of unpacking the suitcase.
People love the burrito bowl at Chipotle, and it's really just a deconstructed burrito. Deconstruction is not
all
bad.
it is, right?
Yes, Sheryl, that is a wonderful, wonderful analogy.
It is such a good analogy.
Well,
oh my gosh, that's so funny.
It's I correct me if I'm wrong, but is there not a scripture that says that we are supposed to work out our own salvation with fear and trembling? And and then it also, there's so many scriptures. We could go on and on about, faith and works. You got to put your faith into action. But, that always stands out to me in that it's got to be a personal thing. And we can't just do what our parents told us, what the pastor at that time told us, what our other Christian friends told us. For a long time, and I've gone through a lot of stuff, a couple of abusive marriages that ended up in very difficult divorces and situations, some health issues, losing both my parents really young, just hard situation after hard situation after hard situation. And, I would go to Christian friends to, get some support, some help, and only to be told many times that I wasn't praying my prayers the right way. I didn't have enough faith. I wasn't claiming the right scriptures. It was like there was this to-do list, and it ended up making me feel worse. Like I'm not doing Christianity right, and that's why I'm suffering. But if you really look at the Bible, I mean, how many times did Jesus heal somebody that didn't even really ask for it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
why is it on me to do everything everybody else is telling me to do, and I still feel so terrible? Like I'm not doing it right.
Absolutely. I think, unfortunately, Christianity has been co-opted over the years with the tactic of guilt. Guilt became a very powerful tool that, in my opinion, was never part of the Christian faith, but began to be used in the tradition to gain control. And it, as you said, it filters down even into relationships we have with friends who are saying, well, if you're really Christian, you don't do this, or you're not praying enough here. I'll never forget, I worked for hospice for many years as a chaplain, and what a gift that time period was. That was probably about 11 years of my life. And I cannot tell you how many gifts dying people gave me in terms of wisdom. And one of the conversation I was having one day with someone, and my role was never to tell anyone what to believe, that nor is it still. But he was telling me he was raised in a fundamentalist tradition. And he said, I don't understand why I have this cancer. I don't understand why I'm dying at such a young age. He was in his 50s, young. He said, but I know that I'm not supposed to question God. Like, I know God's upset with me because I have all these questions. And I said, I'm going to make up a name. This isn't his name, but Roger, you've read the Bible a lot. Can you remind me when Jesus is in the garden before the crucifixion, and it says that Jesus is so distraught that he's sweating blood? I said, can you remind me what he asked God? And he said, well, yes. He said, is there any way this cup could pass from me? I said, man, that sounds like a question, doesn't it?
Sure does.
And that changed everything for Roger. I mean, from that moment on, it's just like the fear of God literally left him. This fear of God, this sense of, oh, well, yeah, I guess questions are okay. And it then began to allow him, not with any wisdom I had, just in our interaction, it allowed him to explore those deep parts of faith that he didn't understand, nor had he been allowed to explore. Unfortunately for him, he was only getting to those places in his last days. And deconstruction is helping people get to those places sooner and ask those questions that we shouldn't be afraid to ask, because Jesus had some questions too.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I remember I grew up exactly like Sheryl, Pentecostal and all. And and it was almost, I was talking with my mom about this the other day. It was almost like it was even a sin to have a question pop up in your mind. Like even that was like, the devil is attacking me, and it's just so funny to look back on that now and to just be like, how do you learn anything? Like why? It doesn't make sense. It's just wild. And
You're right.
your like fresh expressions of church, I really love the idea of it. I want you to expand on it a little bit. I go to a meeting called Sacred Ale that you hold once a month. That's just amazing. It's in a bar and it's great and it's awesome and everybody's welcome. And so you have been showing us some fresh expressions of church and what it can look like and how it can reach people. And so, what do you think about it? How would you define it?
I have a very simple definition of it. It's church.
I
Um,
like it.
Fresh Expressions is really doing, in some ways, what Christianity did in the first century, second century. I mean, if you think about it for a moment, when we get into church metrics, when we want to talk about, okay, how many people were at church or what is church? The honest truth is there is no segment of a New Testament church that looks like church does today.
Hmm.
It doesn't. There's nothing that compares to it. In my opinion, the closest thing that compares to it is Fresh Expression Church, which really isn't new, but it may be new to us. But it's gathering people in the places they already are. It's gathering people for the purpose of building community, spreading love, allowing spiritual questions, allowing doubt, allowing belief, whatever we bring to the table, and making a safe place where we can explore all those things and do it in community, so that this is what I often tell people who need some kind of Christian term to put around it.
Mm-hmm.
When we build community and we allow a healthy place where we can question and we can believe or not, and we can exist together, what happens is a process of discipleship. So to use a term that maybe some church folks like, I often say that the process of Fresh Expressions is really leading us in building that community where we're making disciples in that presence. And it may not be the type of disciples that we would have defined in a 1960s diagram from a church denominational program. Yeah. But it's really, to me, closer to what we were doing in the New Testament, which is, equipping people to build relationships and be good friends and to be good community members and to love each other. That's part of how the early church grew. That's part of what happened in the early church. And I can say more about that if you want. I don't know how church nerd we want me to go or how not, but
I love it.
Yeah. So Fresh Expressions really is looking to kind of get back to what I think is more of our origin, meeting people where they are, and building community there. Yes. For me, that was in a bar and I tell you how that happened. So how this idea came to me is I went through a divorce, separation, and then divorce. In the Baptist world, in many places, the divorce word marks you out of being able to do ministry.
Yeah.
So I was living with that pain of not only having a marriage that came to an end, but my career. I mean, everything I had kind of felt God had called me to do began to get discombobulated and complicated. So by that point, I was going to a local pub and hanging out with some folks there and just having a drink here and there. And what I saw happen as I was there is I began to hear conversations, and then I began to participate in conversations that were more authentic and more spiritual than anything I heard inside a steepled building.
Yep.
And I found myself going, what have we done? What have we done in the steepled stained glass buildings that this kind of conversation isn't happening? But it's happening here. And that began this journey for me to say, I think I experience more church in a bar than I do inside stained glass and steeples. And that's the birth of Sacred Ale. Was coming out of that. I said, listen, I feel called to start this. I feel called to meet with folks where they are and build an authentic community that allows all these things that we have already been talking about to exist, and that tension to exist, but yet at the same time somehow being able to disciple and let God do the work, let God do the rest. And so Sacred Ale's been around now for, I didn't start it then. It took a little longer for me to be able to do that. So it started in 2014. So it's coming up on its 11th year in existence, which is insane.
Wow.
And I didn't know the term Fresh Expressions, even though that's what we were doing. I didn't know it. it wasn't until 2018 that I got the language to put around what God was doing
Mm.
already long
Mhm.
before that. At least I felt God was doing long before that. So that's how Sacred Ale came about. It really came out of my own loneliness, my own pain,
Oh.
and what happened in my life opened my eyes to what was happening in other people's lives, and
Mhm.
that's how it became what it is.
That's often how people, change views and open minds is, walking through something difficult or being with somebody that they're close to, and seeing them experience something difficult.
Well, it's interesting how God uses those really painful
Mhm.
experiences in our lives. Because as I'm hearing you tell your story, I'm thinking back to when it all became real for me after having grown up in church, born into it, baptized, like all of it. There was never a time that I can remember that I was not in church. My dad was a pastor, all of it. And, but, uh, it had become the to-do list. And as long as you're doing better than the sinner down the street, you're okay. Right. But I think that God had to allow experiences in my life to not only get my attention, but to start to build some empathy in me for other people that were hurting. And it was at one of my really low points that a friend had invited me to this women's Bible study, and that was the last thing I wanted. But I was, but I was because I didn't want to get divorced for the second time, right? All that shame, and I really thought that if enough people prayed about my marriage, God would have to
Mm.
save it. And so I'm thinking very opportunistically, if I go to this women's Bible study and I just ask these godly women to pray, like surely God's gonna give me a miracle then.
Yep.
And so that was my whole motivation for going. And what I found when I got there, it was just a bunch of women in this basement of one of the ladies' houses, and there's no prepared sermon, there's no worship band, there's no assigned reading material, there's no Q&A time. It's literally people sharing how God and the Holy Spirit showed up for them,
Yeah.
did in their life that
Yep.
week. And it was like, what? You mean that this is real? Like he really shows up and does
Yeah.
stuff in your life? It just blew my mind. But it was something I'd wondered if it was real my whole life, and I just wanted more of it. But I never would have been in a place to experience that had I not gone through
Wow.
this really painful, broken time.
Mhm.
And no, I was just going to say, so Sheryl, what you experienced would be a fresh expression of church.
Yeah.
You had people getting together, gathering, talking about whatever was going on in terms of
Mhm.
faith for them. Yeah.
I love it. Oh,
Yeah.
I
So
love it.
sometimes people ask me what's the difference between a, a small group meeting and a fresh expression. And that's a good question
Mhm.
because, some folks, okay, what's the difference? And for me, the difference is, well, first of all, it's the discipleship piece. We are forming disciples out of this group. It
Mm.
may not look like what other people have traditionally determined that to be, but
Mm.
in my view, it is what we're doing. And along with that, we are conducting ourselves in a way that connects with community. It's all about reaching people who aren't finding connection elsewhere.
Mhm.
And small groups don't always do that. Small groups can be rather homogeneous in terms of they're just kind of folks who already know each other gathering together.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's not fresh expression. Fresh expression is always trying to bring in, much like your friend did, bring Sheryl to this meeting, someone new to this meeting so that we can build community together.
Mm. Charity here, jumping in for just a second. I want to take a moment to thank our amazing sponsor, Blue Ridge Hope. Whether you are facing depression or anxiety, maybe grief, we believe you shouldn't have to face it alone. And we also believe that healing is not a privilege, it should be a right. And so if you would like to talk to somebody today, regardless of your ability to pay, please check out blueridgehope.org, or you can call them at 828-202-3057. Thank you again so much to Blue Ridge Hope. Now back to the show. Do you think this is also like a good way to be more inclusive to people that have been like have church hurt or have been excluded in the past, like the queer community and
Mhm.
minorities, people with religious trauma, anything like that? Like I think I know the answer to this, but has that been your heart in a lot of this as well?
No, no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt. Traditional church settings have done so much harm to those communities that you mentioned, and to, I mean, quite frankly, both of us came from a tradition where our traditions did a lot of harm to women,
Yeah,
a tremendous amount of harm to women.
it's true. Hmm.
And right now in the United States of America, general population, 1 in 3 Americans have religious trauma, according to the Institute of Religious Research. 1 in 3 Americans have had religious trauma. If you go to our gay and lesbian brothers and sisters, that number is much higher.
I can't even imagine. Yeah.
Absolutely. So part of for me, the heart of Fresh Expressions, and at least my heart in it, is that we create environments that feel safe for
Mhm.
individuals who are people of faith, who are Christian, who care for, or maybe they're not, but they at least want to. There's something about this that draws them. We need to
Mhm.
create environments where everyone can feel included, everyone can feel safe,
Yeah.
and everyone can feel a chance to build community and make connection. And Fresh Expressions do that because we
Mhm.
choose these what we call third places. It's not where we live, it's not where we work. It's usually somewhere that we gather, which could be anywhere from a dog park to a
Yeah.
pub to a coffee shop to a tattoo parlor. There's a
Mhm.
fresh expression in Florida that's called Tattoo Church, which I absolutely love.
Well, that's where I wanna
And
go.
oh, it's so cool. So
Man.
one of the things they do at that one is someone gets a tattoo and they tell why they're getting it. Spiritually, what
Mhm.
is it about? Like, how does that connect?
Yeah.
And how does that connect to faith? And it's just it's unbelievable.
That's
So
amazing.
I mean,
Beautiful.
if you think where people gather, Fresh
Mhm.
Expressions can take place there. There's no limit
Yep.
whatsoever, and it does make it safe. And we have a responsibility in that too, in making it safe.
Mhm.
But the environment itself feels safer for people who've experienced religious trauma, which
Yeah.
there's a growing number of Americans who have.
Mhm. Unfortunately, that is very true. And even like, Cheryl, your Bible study,
Yeah.
it had to be something fresh and different for me too, to
Yeah.
even consider, stepping back into any kind of like religious world or
Right.
spiritual world. So,
Well, it's interesting. I even experienced, I would say, a fresh expression at a very traditional church in my neighborhood. I live in downtown, midtown Sacramento. There's a
Mhm.
historic Lutheran church, St. John's Lutheran, that is like a block away from me. And I was out running. It was Easter Sunday morning. I didn't have any family here. I had no plans for Easter. So I'm just out running, enjoying the beautiful day. And so I'm kind of in my running clothes, kind of sweaty. And I'm kind of walking past St. John's Lutheran Church, and there's this little lady all dressed up in her Easter best. And she just looks so sweet and put together. And she greets me, and I'm like, hi, happy Easter. And she invited me in. And I was like, oh, I'm kind of sweaty. I've been out running. She's like, it doesn't matter. She's like, we have the homeless folks join us all the time. You're fine. You're not going to offend anyone. You can sit in the back if it makes you feel better, but like you don't have to. So I go in. I'm like, well, it's Easter
yeah,
Sunday. I got a personal
exactly.
invite. I'm going to go. And I sit down, and in the back row with me is a young trans person.
Mhm.
Um, and he's tall and very lanky, and he's wearing like a a prom dress that was,
Mm.
I felt like, it was maybe his idea of what you wear on Easter, just put it on.
Yes. Oh,
He's got
that's
some
beautiful.
makeup on, and listen to this sermon, and then we're singing the traditional Easter songs. I love the traditional Easter hymns, and the one "Up from the Grave He Rose," and we're singing this,
Mhm.
and our eyes met, me and this trans person, and like, I don't know, there was just like this mutual acceptance, and we're sharing this moment, and it was so beautiful and powerful in this very traditional historical Lutheran church. So I feel like
Wow.
where there is love, you can
Mhm.
have that fresh expression
Oh, yeah.
wherever you are.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, and then that isn't that the beautiful thing about when we get back to what you had said earlier, Cheryl, when we get back to actually having a real relationship with Jesus, how that transforms everything, and God can show up wherever God chooses.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
Yep.
much to our dismay,
Mm.
even a stained glass steeple building, God
Yeah.
could show up in.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah.
one of the things I love about what you just described makes me think about the fact that when your eyes met, it was almost like you both acknowledge your pilgrims on a path that you are finding
Mm.
your way, and it's not easy.
Yeah.
Like you are souls that connect
Mm.
beyond just a moment. Like you both are in this world trying to do and to live and to love and to find community. And in that moment, you both happen to be there. It reminds me of Ram Dass, a spiritual teacher um, who who's now passed on. He wasn't Christian; that wasn't his particular faith. But one of the things he said, which I found so powerful, he said, "In the end, we're really just walking each other home."
Oh.
And for that moment in time in that church, you and that person were walking
Yeah.
each other home.
Yeah.
Mm. That is so beautiful.
It was a beautiful moment. And I tell you, I love when God, it's funny. I say
Mhm.
God shows up, but he's always there,
Yeah.
right? It's
He
just,
is.
we
Mhm.
have those moments of recognition, and they're just powerful and overwhelming.
Absolutely.
And,
Yep.
and, I could never go back to the old way that I
Mhm.
was raised. Now that I have experienced a real living, breathing, involved with my
Mm.
life God,
Yep.
I just couldn't go back. And it hurts my heart that, we're in a place where what I've just described to you is demonized among many in
I
church
know.
circles. And I just don't know. I mean, maybe the answer is love. It doesn't seem like we're getting very far with that, but maybe that's another conversation for another day. But when you
I
experience
know.
something like that, you want everyone to experience that. And it just blows your mind that people don't want to, you know?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Do you know who Nadia Bolz-Weber is? Bolz-Weber
I do.
is,
Yes.
okay. So Nadia Bolz-Weber is ordained Lutheran pastor, and she just does some tremendous work. I could talk about her all day, but anyway,
Mhm.
she says, and this was actually I think something maybe her and her husband were talking about, and she took this away, that anytime you draw a line and you decide who's on the right
Mm.
side of that line, then Jesus is automatically on the other side.
That yes.
And
Mhm.
that is exactly what so many in traditional experiences of Christianity have done. We've drawn lines and decided, oh no, that person can't be on our side of the line.
Yeah.
And what we've done is we've really then got on the opposite side of the line of Jesus at that moment, because
Yeah.
Jesus is over there.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even the moment Cheryl just described, I don't
Yeah.
know what else feels like Jesus other than
Right.
that.
I had another really cool experience in a very traditional church. This one was in San Francisco up on Nob Hill. Once again, a very traditional
Mhm.
church. I believe this one is Episcopalian, but it might be another Lutheran. It's funny, growing up Pentecostal, I was taught that they were all bad.
Yeah, so we don't learn them.
They were all
Mm-mm.
pathways to hell. Oh, and the
Yep.
Catholics and Mormons especially. But your Presbyterians, Lutherans, Methodists, don't listen to them. Charity, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, absolutely.
So I happened to be in San Francisco on Christmas Eve, and I wanted to go to. I was just like drawn. I wanted to go to a service at this church because it's beautiful cathedral. It's historic. And wouldn't you know it? And my husband at the time, he just didn't want anything to do with it. And he's like, "You're just gonna have to go by yourself." And I'm like, "Well, I guess I will," because like I just feel very drawn to this
Yeah.
church. I get a text from a friend that I knew in Oregon, and she and her husband are in San Francisco that night, and they want to meet up. And I'm like, "Well, I want to go to this Christmas Eve service." And
Yeah.
she's like, "Oh, I would love to go too. We will go." And her husband, Bill, who is an ex-Mormon, not practicing now, so he's just not religious. He went with us, and the three of us sat in this service. And it's just a very, very liturgical, very traditional, but very beautiful Christmas Eve service. And I'm just hearing God just through the scripture, just through the scriptures and the prayers, he's speaking to me. And at the very end, they're playing the music as we're walking out, and the organist throws in that musical line from Close Encounters of the Third Kind. You know what I'm talking about? That do do do. And I'm like, what?
What is happening?
In my mind, like, because I'll sometimes get flashes of words, and I saw the flash, "You are not alone." And then I go back on Wikipedia because I'm looking at, I never saw Close Encounters of the Third. Like, I wasn't allowed to go to the movies when I was a kid, so I never saw Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And that is the theme of that movie. You are not alone. And it was like God was using these just random things to let me know that even though my husband was in the process of abandoning me, because we ended up splitting up a month later, that I was not alone. He was always with me, and he was going to bring people along to walk. We're going to walk each other home, and we'll each take different segments, but I'm never alone. And I've never felt alone since.
God moments. It's just crazy. That was one thing I could never deny when I was trying to when I was in the deepest part of like my deconstruction, was that I'd had a couple little moments, couple experiences myself that felt, genuine and real. And that helped me, hold out a little bit of hope. I'd always say, I love this. I heard somebody say this isn't mine, but I was a hopeful agnostic because I so desperately still wanted it because it had been my identity for so long. And so, yeah. That is crazy, Sheryl. I just love that.
Well,
I'm a movie person, so.
I think, faith, God's obviously been around longer than the planet, longer than human beings. Like, God has been in existence, and human beings from the very beginning have been trying to describe God and kind of define God. And I think as time's gone on, I kind of think of it like, how sometimes you'll be driving out in the country and you'll see like this like leaning tower of junk because like somebody's like built on to their house, and there's a room here and a catio over here and a porch here. Like, it's just like, and you're like, how is that all holding together? I just feel like human beings have just tacked on and tacked on and tacked on. And I think God wants us to get rid of the junk and just get to the basics of you and me, and you just reveal yourself to me. How I can take it in, how I can understand it, because I really love this relationship and I want it to grow,
Yeah. Yes.
Sheryl, what you just spoke to is something that's very important to me because I agree 100%. I think so much of what we have taken in connection with God has been built on and changed, and we've added to it so much that we've gotten away from really what the intention of like the Bible was for. I mean, I often say the Bible is a beautiful story about how God pursues humanity and loves us. The Bible is not a science book. The Bible was never intended to be a history book. The Bible was intended to be a story about God's love and pursuit of humanity and our desire to connect with God. And when we get back to that, like, then to me, the Bible can be beautiful because I don't have to defend it. I don't need to defend it. Like, why would I defend a story that ancient people were coming together with so they could describe the relationship with the divine? Because that's what it was. And our need, or people's need, including ours, mine at times, has been to make that fit into a Western package of fact.
Yeah.
And it was not written in a Western culture. It was written in an Eastern culture. And it was also
I don't think many people know that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I'll never forget. I went to a funeral one time way back in the mountains. I mean, it was so far back. I was not sure that we were not going to get stuck trying to get in and out of the car. And the little church we went to didn't even have power. It was just, there was no electricity to it. So this funeral started, and these two ministers were like tag team preaching, which was like one would stop and the other would start. And it was just a lot. Somewhere in the midst of all of that, which has nothing to do with the death, this minister starts saying, I'm going to tell you all today, I believe in the King James Version of the Bible, the 1611 edition, the same one that the Apostle Paul carried.
No, he didn't.
No. I guess no one told you Paul wrote the majority of that Bible. That
well, duh, that's why he carried it around. At least what we have. He's very proud of what he wrote. Okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the chronological years that he was lining up, they are so far off.
Not quite matching up there. Yeah.
No, not at all. But it builds up. But it builds back to what you're describing, Sheryl, which is, we've put all this stuff around it, whether it be a translation of the Bible or whether it be an exact story has to meet these standards. It's just fluff. It's junk. And I think that junk is falling away.
Yeah.
And I believe that's why, where we are today in our culture, at least in Western culture, American culture, and Europe for that matter too, which is Western. I mean, is that people aren't going to traditional church settings. There's a decline, a significant decline. And I think people are just tired with the bull crap.
Yeah.
We've had so much bull that people are done with it.
I think so too.
Because we know that people aren't less spiritual. We know that. Statistics are showing that left and right. Which is, if I might for a moment, I'd love to share something about fresh expressions and some stats that just came out, I think, in 2023. Please. So Springtide Research did this in-depth research with young people from the age of, like, I think 12 to 25, somewhere in that range. And they began to kind of say, okay, tell us about your spirituality. Tell us about all these things. Well, I mean, it was ginormous. I mean, from a spiritual perspective, there was like 78% of this population had a desire to connect spiritually in some way. Wow. What that generation is doing, and others, is what Springtide described as unbundled spirituality. So let me explain that a little further. So when all of us were growing up, we got our TV either from satellite or cable or network television. It was bundled, meaning when I went to buy a package with my cable company, I couldn't go say, I don't want MTV, but I want Showtime. Or, no, I don't want USA Network. Can I have TBS and only TBS? That's not how it worked. So when you bought a package, you got the whole package. But now we unbundle the way we watch TV, right? I can choose to buy the Paramount app. I can choose Netflix. I don't have to take everything at one swath anymore. Well, that's what people have done with their spirituality. They've unbundled it. And before, we got all of our spirituality in this bundle from the church. You went on Sunday morning and you sat down and you listened, and the church told you, or the minister told you, you believe X, Y, and Z. Okay, thank you. It was a bundled faith. But what people are doing now is they're unbundling it, which means I might go to yoga on Tuesday night and experience a deep spiritual moment.
Mhm.
I also may choose to go to a poetry reading on Thursday night and experience a profound spiritual moment.
Mhm.
I may choose to go to Sacred Ale and have this community connection with these folks here, which feels very
Mhm.
spiritual. So people have unbundled it. They're not getting it all from the same source like the church
Mhm.
anymore. It looks very
Yep.
different. And that's Springtide research just blew that out of the water, or at least it blew me out of the water what they were coming up
Yeah.
with, which is why fresh expressions are so important.
Yeah.
Oh.
What used to
And
always bother me as a kid, because I would think, I'm very logical, and I would always think,
Mhm.
what about the people hundreds,
Mhm.
thousands of years ago, and they weren't around to go to this church with this
Yep.
set of doctrine? Did they all go to hell?
I know.
What about people in other countries that they certainly did not go to this particular church? What, like, does God hate everyone except for this particular branch
Yeah.
of, like, how did they get it right? And all these other people are slightly, like, it never made sense to me
Mm-mm.
until I started unbundling it. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay,
Mhm.
because you really
Yes.
just have to go more to the source. You just have to go to the source.
Yep. That's it.
Otherwise, it really is. It's that Homer Simpson, the Simpsons episode where he's like, "Who do I pray to? Because I'm just probably pissing off the wrong God because I picked the wrong one." You know what I mean? And it's like that's what it feels like. Of course, like don't follow these rules. Ah! But which ones are the right ones? Is it just because I was
Mhm.
born here?
Yeah.
It's
And
kind
how
of
do you know you got the
convenient.
right one?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because there is only
Yeah.
one. He created all of us. So,
So one of the poems that I love to read and sometimes use in spiritual gathering is a poem by John Godfrey Sachs called "The Blind Men and the Elephant."
hmm,
Do either of you know this poem?
mm-mm.
No.
So it's the blind men and the elephant, and it's the story about how these blind men are all touching the elephant. And they're like, oh, well, the elephant is clear that he is very much like an ear because that's what the blind man's touching. And then the other one, is groping about the tail. And they're like, oh no, the elephant is very much like a rope.
Hmm.
And then another one was like, oh no, they felt the trunk. So the end of the poem is that all were partly in the right, but all were in the wrong.
That's
And I
so
like to
true.
think about that with our journey with the divine, with God.
Mm.
We're all blind men and women groping about the elephant.
Yep.
We're
Yep.
having our experiences, and our experiences we can describe as X, Y, or Z, but God is
Mhm.
so much bigger than X, Y, and Z.
I know.
What is the most unexpected or random place where you experienced God, you encountered him, you know it was him, and you're like, what are you doing here?
Absolutely. Well, I know mine because it's what led me to start this podcast. It's when
What
I
was it?
texted you. It was I was actually cutting the grass. I was on the lawnmower, and I don't know what happened. I was listening to a song by Flamey Grant called Good Day, and it just hit me just all of a sudden, and I felt like I could feel something. It was almost like peace, I guess, and like just comfort, and I hadn't felt that kind of sensation in a long
Mm.
time, and then like talking to you, just all these things falling into place, and the song just touching me so much, talking about coming back home. It's a good day to do that, and coming out of the shadows. And so yeah, it was just totally random. I'm not sure exactly what prompted it, but that would be mine, the weirdest.
Mm.
About you, Travis?
I think for me, it would had to be where I was describing earlier, where I was in the bar with all these individuals who were sharing their brokenness
Mm,
and sharing their hearts in such a tender moment, and that the authenticity became so powerful that God's presence became so real. And it just took me, I mean, as I said, it's why Sacred L exists today, but it is so powerful for me because all these years and all this teaching that I had experienced and even bought into some of the lies kind of said, well, God's presence isn't in these places with these people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's where I experienced God's presence more powerful than I have ever experienced it elsewhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say about 12 a.m. in a bar with a lot of people who were crying and talking about real things.
Wow.
Oh, what about you, Sheryl? Do you have an odd one?
I have so many. I have so many because
I'm jealous. I know.
Start. There have been times where I've just been listening to a song and not necessarily a Christian artist, like Mumford and Sons is one where like I'll just be hit with a line and just like start crying. So this is kind of funny and ironic. So one time God met me in just a place I would have never expected him to meet me, and I wasn't really happy about being there. So I once upon a time, one of the stations that I did a show for was in Indianapolis, Indiana. When I was in Portland, I did shows Indianapolis, Memphis, Austin, Sacramento. Like I had a bunch of stations. And so Indianapolis wanted me to come to town. They brought in all their remote shows to town, and we all, hung out. We met clients and, had dinner together. So, I don't have a rental car. I'm just kind of at the mercy. We're all riding around all together in one happy family in this station van. And the morning show guys wanted to go to a strip club, and I did not want to go to the strip club because I actually was having issues with my husband at the time. He was going with his buddy after work, and it was very hurtful to me. It was very, and I, it gone beyond hurt. Like with me, I was very, very bitter and just very angry towards people that would go to one of those places, women that would work there. It was just like super bitter, right? And anytime that subject would come up, like, unleash the fury, right? And so I'm like, you guys, I'm tired. I want to go back. And they're like, oh, it'll just be 5 minutes and you can sit in the back room. You don't have to watch anything. I'm like, all right, whatever. So true to their word, we sat in the back room. There was no dancing going on in this back room. I think they positioned themselves so they could see through the doorway, but like, I didn't have to see anything.
You didn't get to see it. Yeah, exactly.
And I'm just like, oh my gosh, if anybody finds out that I was in this place, like I'm just beside myself to be in this place. And finally it was time to go. And I'm standing up, and the station manager is standing up, and we're trying to get the guys to come with us, and they're just taking their time. And so I did kind of like look out over the room, and I saw so much sadness. I saw loneliness. I saw people like trying to feel something, to feel some kind of connection, and there is no connection. Like there's just, I'm dropping out. Okay, there we go. There's just women dancing and maybe a very lonely, sad looking man just kind of sitting there, but they're not connected.
No, yeah.
Just the whole scene was super sad, and it really hurt. It actually broke my heart. And I remember telling the station manager, I was like, do you have any, like, we need to give this girl some, she was a very young girl up there, and she just looked so sad and broken. And I was like, we need to give her, like, she needs money. Like somehow God spoke to me, she needs money.
Yeah.
And he like cleaned out his pockets. He went up, he made me go with him. He's like, and he's like, my ear, because like he didn't want to be like creepy guy, right? And
yeah.
And so, but he like gave her all the money he had, and she like looked at us and just like you could see like her facial expression just changed, and she was just so grateful and said thank you. And we left, and I was like, wow, okay, so God just gave me a lesson that I never signed up for. I no longer had bitterness or judgment towards the women that work there, because in some cases they're just trying to feed their family. And God released me from judgment of the men that go there, because I don't know their stories, but they were obviously broken and sad. And everyone was broken and sad. And didn't Jesus come to give us love? And I don't know, it just changed how I felt. Like I was no longer so judgmental of it. Now I haven't gone back since, like that was enough. But God used that to change me.
That's amazing.
That's amazing as well. And what I wanted to say when you were telling the story, there was this song that kept coming to my mind. There's a country artist by the name of Ashley McBride. She has a song called Gospel Night at the Strip Club. And I will send it to both of you. Her performance of it is astounding. And I actually cried through part of the song. It just found it very touching.
Oh, I would love to hear it. Please send it. And then I'll post it on all our social media pages.
I want to hear it. But, there's really no difference between us and, quote, them. Like, all of us human beings, like, we are all so similar and so alike. It's just, life gives us different circumstances, and we're all just trying to survive and get through the best
way. Walk each other home.
Exactly. Yes. And that's what we got to start doing, is walking each other home. And there's just not enough of that, sadly, right now in our country.
Yeah, I think we all have a desire to walk people in our direction, but really our job is to walk each other home.
I think that's exactly right too. I agree. What, Travis, what would you say to somebody that like wants to experience something new like that and is open to trying it, but is maybe like worried about, leaving a more traditional church, because that is kind of their identity. It's like what they're used to.
Oh yeah. And I will be frank that it's not easy. Nor will you probably be allowed to go calmly from your previous places. I'll never forget when we started Sacred L, someone sent me an email. I didn't know them. It was out of the blue. And said that, I was just a horrible person, that this is just a horrible environment and I'm leading people away from Christ, and so on and so forth. And one of the things this person said is that you all are a bunch of whoremongers. That was the term he used.
Well then.
So I was like, well, I replied back and I said, I don't think you really know much about the sexual life of any of these people. And nor do you really know much about their spiritual life.
Nope.
So, you're going to get pushback. You are. That's my point with that. And we've had it over the years. But at the end of the day, you really just know that this makes a difference. Like to me, this new fresh expressions of church, which are really kind of old expressions of church that we're just doing again, is where I believe God's Spirit is working.
Yeah.
And if someone can't use God's Spirit, I don't know, use what you want there. But there is a movement, a divine movement that's moving in these directions that we need to connect with. So what I would say to them is don't be afraid to do it. And if it makes you feel comfortable, you can do both. You can still go back to your traditional setting on a Sunday. But just know that what you're doing and connecting with these groups that are doing this kind of work is being a part of church, a new work that God is doing again in people's lives. And we're finding that connection in places they're already gathering, as I've said before.
Yep, absolutely. I just love it so much. And it's been amazing watching it in real life, seeing it play out, seeing fresh expressions of church. Definitely something I never thought I would be a part of again. But, like we say, I really think God has a sense of humor. I feel like the day that I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm not gonna believe anything anymore. I'm just done. It's like the next day, have that experience. And I think he just laughs because he's like, huh, okay, I'll show you. Yeah. But
Man, I
anyway,
love this kind of conversation, and there's
oh,
so
me
many
too.
things. There's so many things that I didn't mention, and I'm kind of beating myself up over with fresh expressions. And so, if we can get back to it another time, or even if you guys ever want to talk about, so my doctoral work is fresh expressions and how that addresses loneliness. So I've done a
Mhm.
lot of work around loneliness in the United States, and how I believe that God is working amongst fresh expressions to address the epidemic of
Mm,
loneliness. So if you ever want to talk about those things, I would love to come back.
Oh, I
wonderful.
would
Oh, we're
love
gonna have you
that.
back. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there is a loneliness epidemic in our country. And as my naturopath told me, it affects your immune system. So you
Yeah,
are not as healthy as you could be if you
no,
are lonely. We need
you
It's
connection.
true.
you
It's
want me to
true.
throw you a couple of statistics out that'll blow you away.
Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah.
It's so the Surgeon General put out a report in 2023, and he said from a health standpoint, from in terms of how what our health is happening with our health, loneliness is more dangerous to our health than smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Wow.
Yeah. I believe it.
I do
Loneliness
too.
is more dangerous to our health than diabetes, obesity,
Mhm.
lack of movement. It's the top one of the top parts that are
Yeah,
causing many health issues, so much greater than some of the things we talk about every day, such as
absolutely.
mhm,
And
yeah.
you just don't think about it and how I
Mm,
mean, the worst about one of the worst, forms of torture is isolation,
oh yeah.
being put into isolation by yourself for weeks at a
Yeah.
time. When I feel like after COVID,
Oh yeah.
where everyone was just, so used to being alone and in their house, I
Mm.
really think people have struggled.
And I don't think
One of
we've recovered from
Oh,
that.
no. No, not
Mm-mm,
at all.
me
So,
neither.
again, I'm full of useless statistics, but because of the work I've been doing, it's kind of always in my head. But
Yes.
one of the so do you know the reservations app OpenTable? Are you familiar
Mhm.
with
Yeah.
OpenTable?
Mhm.
So OpenTable did research on takeout versus eat-in restaurant, and they said in 2016, about 16% of the total restaurant business was takeout. In 2023, it was 74%.
Oh my gosh.
And that's post lockdown, by the way.
That's
We're
Yes.
lockdown,
we're all
that's right.
free to go wherever we want at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, can't blame that
Un
there.
Nope.
Mm-mm.
That is insane. Wow.
Mhm. So when we kind of like when we're talking about fresh expressions, to me, like this is what the beauty of fresh expressions is. It also it's
Mhm.
spiritual, yes, but it's also just getting people back together. You know, drawing us out of isolation and creating environments where people can feel welcome and comfortable, and they'll come
Yeah,
because there's so much isolation and loneliness that's gripping the nation. I mean, just that statistic in and of itself shows that people are choosing to get their food and go home.
I know. I know. God. Yeah, okay, listen, we are definitely gonna have
Yeah,
you back on to do a whole episode
deeper
on
dive
that.
into that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
dive deep
I'd love to.
into the pandemic of loneliness because
Absolutely.
that is a topic that, yeah, it's just I don't think on people's radar most of the time.
Is there any way that anybody listening right now can find out more about fresh expressions, or like
Mhm.
where can they connect with you online?
Oh, I would love to talk with anyone about this. So the main way would be you can connect through. I'm all of a sudden I'm pausing because I'm like, what social media platforms am I on? Probably the best way would be through Substack, because that's what I'm using mainly to write with these days, communicate with. So if somebody has an interest and wants to connect in that way, you can connect with me through Substack and read some of what I think is important or I feel is going on in my life. But there's also ways to connect with me through that. My email's on there and so forth. So
Perfect.
uh,
I can also put
Substack.
all of it in the show notes.
Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
put your handles in there. So if anybody wants to,
Thank
follow
you,
along.
because I don't even know what they are right now. I
Oh,
would have to go look
perfect.
them up.
I don't know mine either.
But
You're fine.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But
That's
Substack would be the way I'm there most.
okay.
Awesome.
Okay, guys. Well, thank you, Travis. It was
Thank you.
awesome, of
Thank you.
course. And thank you guys for watching. If you made it the whole time, we really appreciate it. I'll have everything
Get
linked
a
in the
gold
show notes.
sticker.
Yeah, yes, really though. I need to order some and start sending people stickers out once they complete
Yeah.
a full episode. But everything will be in the show notes. So if you want to find out more about Travis, Sheryl, me, the podcast, all that fun stuff, it'll be down there. And until next time, bye.